Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Remembering. We're here today with Hope Pedraza, and we are going to have a conversation about mineral balancing and the nourished entrepreneur. I'm really looking forward to this. It feels to me like a new conversation on the burnout, the energy topic, the entrepreneurship, and like all the ways we strive to get our energy right. So when I heard from Hope, I was like, yes, let's have this conversation. Let's come on here and do this. So welcome, Hope, to Sacred Remembering. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I would love to ask you to tell us a bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your journey and how you came to this and this focus on mineral balancing. And you also do this energy focus with human design for this holistic, energetic approach to like strong woman entrepreneurship. Those are my words, not yours.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
I would
like
love to
that.
hear a little bit about what you do and how you came to this.
Yeah. I guess, official title is I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which I know that's a mouthful, but essentially I use functional labs to help people get to the root cause of chronic symptoms. And so my work, how I mean, there's obviously various paths that got me to this path I'm on now, but
Yeah.
the work I started was with just traditional nutrition coaching. And I started that. I also have a brick and mortar studio, Pilates studio. And so I started incorporating nutrition into that because I wanted to provide this really comprehensive experience for people. Like, could come and get everything they wanted, the mindfulness and the workout and the nutrition and all the things. So when I started doing the nutrition piece, I was working with mostly, well, all women at the time. And I was recognizing that, they're coming to me for pretty common things women talk about. I want to lose 5 pounds, or I want to, tone up, or whatever. But then when I'm working with these women, I'm recognizing, okay, what's really going on in their bodies requires deeper conversations than talking about calories and macros, and which is kind of the extent that I was working with them
Yeah.
at the time. And so that led me down the path of becoming a functional practitioner because I really wanted to help them get to the root cause, right? There was gut and hormone and thyroid and all these other things that I wanted to be able to connect the pieces. And so from there, it kind of went along with my own personal journey, my own personal spiritual journey. I was also recognizing now that I'm working in getting to the root cause, like the quote unquote root cause. It was really just looking at the physical root cause. And with my own personal journey and my spiritual journey, I'm now becoming aware of, okay, the physical root cause isn't the actual root cause. The root cause of what's going on in the physical body actually has this energetic, emotional component that is the root cause, and
Mm.
that's what we need to get down to. So that led me to putting all these other modalities that I use together. So I use human design, like you mentioned. I use human design, and I use some subconscious methods like NLP and hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, so we can really get to
Mm.
I'm using air quotes here, get to the root cause. And yes, we are going to get to the bottom why your hormones are out of whack and you have headaches or you feel like you have ADHD or whatever it is. But it starts with putting, yes, the physical pieces with these energetic, emotional, and spiritual pieces together.
Yeah, this is so brilliant and so needed. And I just turned 44 this week.
Oh, happy
So,
birthday.
thank you. So, when I rounded the corner of 40, I was really blessed to have some friends who were talking about perimenopause and like doing perimenopausal education. And so, in some ways, I feel like I got I don't know, like a head start. Like even just last night, I was in a circle and most of the women were menopausal.
Mm,
And it was like they'd just been dealing with symptoms for a long time. And so, like, I'm really grateful that that conversation about hormonal wellness is happening kind of like earlier and earlier. Like, I really think we should start having that conversation when women are like 35,
totally, totally.
because it's all coming. And the reason I say this is like also I think we get away with a lot. Like when
Mm,
your body is younger in your 20s and 30s, you can have the habit of like, oh, I'm tired, but I'll just have an espresso and I'll like pump
push
through
through.
whatever. And so we have these ways of working in our culture that are inherently depleting. And then we have these gorgeous feminine systems that are hormonal and fluid and cyclical and completely dynamic. And the system abuses that, the cultural system abuses that feminine
Right.
system as a default. And then, so it's not surprising when those ways of quote unquote functioning are not actually
Mm-hmm.
functioning
Mm-hmm.
anymore, which is really a time where we get to like know ourselves more deeply and more
Yeah.
authentically. It doesn't just
Yeah.
have to be like, oh, it's not working anymore.
Right.
But
Right.
like, what does the system actually want to um yeah, like open into is how it
Mm-hmm.
feels in this moment, like a bigger holistic understanding of the whole
Mm-hmm.
self.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think, I mean, to your point, I feel like we should start learning about this stuff when we hit puberty. Like, I think
It's true.
it's also a disservice to wait until we're in our 30s. And I think with
Yeah,
a lot of the women I work with, that's part of the problem is we really don't understand how this all works. Like, we weren't given a
right.
manual. And I don't know about you, but like the sex education I had in school was like, oh, you have a period, the end. Like, okay, and you can get pregnant
Yeah,
now. Like, that's the extent of it. We're not taught
yeah,
about our 28-day cycle and our rhythms and what all that means. And so for a lot of the work that I do, really, I just want to educate and empower women. Like, let's understand this vessel that we've been given
yeah,
so that we, like you said, so we can really use this to get to know ourselves at this deep level and be able to go into these next stages of our hormonal path of perimenopause and menopause in an empowered way where now we know how to handle it. We don't have to, like you said, with the women you were talking to the other day, we don't have to just deal with it. And
yeah,
I don't want women to have to just deal with it. I want them to actually understand it and to be able to know what to do to, manage symptoms or prolong symptoms or get rid of symptoms, right? Any of those things. And I think that just understanding that piece, and I totally agree with you with the our culture really does just take a whack at feminine cycles, and that's the reason I brought in the human design piece is it's just understanding yourself at this deeper level, at a different energetic level. So now we can understand our hormonal cycles, we can understand how that works, and now we can understand ourselves at this deep energetic cellular level at the same time, so we can really work with all of our natural rhythms, creative rhythms, hormonal rhythms, energetic rhythms, all of those pieces to just help with more ease and flow in the body as we age and go into all those progressive stages of hormonal living.
yes, yeah. And I really love so much the conversation of human design and entrepreneurship because when we're doing any work, it's helpful information to have. But when we're designing our own business and we really get to create the ways we want to work and we get to design these businesses so that they work for us
Mm-hmm.
optimally. And so knowing your type and your strategy is super helpful. That was an early, game changer. And then I feel like I'm still living into my design because they say like, I learned about human design through Karen Curry Parker of
Yeah.
Quantum Human Design.
Yeah.
And she's always talking about like it takes 7 years to
Mm-hmm.
decondition. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been about 7 years since I really learned about human design. And I'm like, I feel more free and like my energy is more available,
Mm-hmm.
in right relationship with who I really am. I feel that all the time. And I'm like, wow, yeah, this really did take at least 7 years to
Yeah, for
decondition
sure.
like what it was.
Yes.
I'm curious what your human design is.
Yeah, yeah. So I am a 3-5 sacral manifesting generator.
Okay,
And
awesome.
yours?
I am a 4-6 emotional projector.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm still very much like, I'm still on the roof. I just turned 44. They talk about the 6 lines in
Mm-hmm.
any type being on the roof. And so
Yes.
I'm in this, like, I know that I'm building this body of work for,
Mm-hmm.
even like the next few decades,
Yeah.
like really coming into it. So
Yeah. Very cool.
yeah, so that informs the way that we work. And if you want to say anything about human design throughout the conversation, please be my guest. But let's also move into mineral balancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is mineral balancing?
Yeah, great place to start. So, mineral balancing is kind of one of the foundational pieces of the physical healing that I do, that I help people with. And I have three foundational labs that I like to run on my clients, but the mineral balancing is kind of at the crux of it. And really, it's the only lab that I offer as a standalone lab because it has so much data, and it
Mm.
provides so much that we can go off of just alone as a standalone. And so the way I do mineral balancing, well, let me back up. Minerals, if you might have learned this in like basic biology and maybe high school or college if you took one in college, but minerals are called the spark plugs in the body, and they're considered the spark
Mm.
plugs of the body because literally every reaction in the body requires minerals, whether they're the catalyst for that reaction or they're a cofactor. They play a role in every reaction in the body. So when we're talking about getting to the root cause, right, what's actually why things are happening the way they're happening in the body, women come through and they're like, just fix my hormones. We can look at your hormones, but we have to go like 10 layers deeper than that. What's
Mm.
going on at a cellular level is what's going on with your minerals. Minerals are in your cells and they're interacting at a cellular level. So we have to start there. So that's why I love mineral balancing. I like starting with that piece because we can really get this. It's like laying the groundwork for everything else that goes on in the body. And so the way I test minerals is a hair tissue and mineral analysis, or HTMA. You're literally sending in some of your hair, and it's going to look at your minerals in a much different way than a conventional method would. So if you can go to a conventional medical doctor and you can ask to run a blood lab, right, to measure your minerals, which is fine, but it's going to look at it in a completely different perspective. First of all, any blood lab is just a blip in time, right? It's like what's going on right now. I could
Right.
do the same lab tomorrow and it could say something different. So it's giving you a pretty limited perspective of what's going on in the body. Not saying it's not valuable, and especially with specific markers and metrics, I love looking at people's blood labs. They'll send me their blood labs from their doctor, and I can compare it to the labs that I do. But with minerals, like I said, this is what's going on at a cellular level. So when we're looking at minerals, we really want to get a look at what's going on over a period of time. And that's what the hair analysis allows you to do. So you're able to look at what's going on chronically in the body. And then when we talk about minerals, not to get too sciencey here, but a lot of the minerals are intracellular, meaning they're supposed to be in your cells. So if you're looking at a blood lab, it's really, for a handful of these minerals, it's not going to give you a really accurate look at what's going on in your cells because it's measuring your blood. When we look at hair as a tissue is just a clump of cells, right? Now we can get a look at what's going on in your cells. So, for example, I've had a few clients actually come to me and they've had blood labs done, and their doctors are like, oh, your potassium's really high on your blood labs. Well, potassium is one of those intracellular minerals. So if it's high in your blood lab, it actually means it's not bioavailable. Your body's not using it. You're deficient. We need to amp up
Mm.
the potassium. So there's just, I feel like minerals are very misunderstood and underestimated. Like the power of understanding what's going on with your minerals is really underestimated, which is why I love to start there with my clients.
Yeah, this was a really exciting place to start because it's different. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's a different conversation. And I know, me and my friends, we're like going into the, hormonal doctors at this point and
Yes.
being like, okay, where am I at? And they're testing the blood test. And you're like, just like you said, it's a blip in time. If I'm, depending on what phase of my cycle I'm in. So
Right.
it's kind of like a guessing game,
Exactly.
and we need to look at
Yes.
this holistic picture
Yes.
more so. So if someone is imbalanced in their minerals,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they're an entrepreneur, maybe they're a full-time mom, maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're working in an office, like regardless, how's it showing up
Yeah.
in their life if there are like deficiencies or just
Yeah.
imbalances?
It's a good question. And I think this is the other reason why so often minerals kind of just get brushed aside, is because so many of the symptoms mimic 50,000 other things. Like
Mm.
low energy is probably the number one thing women tell me. Like they'll have this laundry list of symptoms, some of them, not all of them, some of them. Low energy is, I would say, I dare say, almost 100% of the time on the list. Low
Number
energy
one.
could literally
Yeah.
be anything. It could be anything. I could give you a whole list of why. So low energy is one, and this is, I'd say, low energy, brain fog, headaches, any sort of like feelings of inflammation. So sometimes it might be muscle aches, bone pain, joint pain, those things. sleep issues. And when I say energy issues, I mean, this could show up in a multitude of ways. It could be you wake up and you don't feel rest. Like you wake up from a full night's sleep and you don't feel rested. It could be maybe you have like energy spikes and drops throughout the day. Like your energy is kind of all over the place. It could be I'm great for part of the day and then I just crash the last half of the day. It could be I'm not sleeping well. So the energy thing shows up in a lot of different ways. The
And I
brain.
feel like every woman listening is like, me.
Yeah, totally. Well, and here's the other problem is you bring this to your doctor and it's like, oh, it's just your hormones. And there's no like plan of action. Like there's
Yeah.
no, that's about it. Right. So
Right.
it's so common and because it's not like something that like you can still function, like maybe not functioning great, but because it's not like detrimental to your everyday existence, it's like, oh, you're just getting older. It's just your hormones, right? And
Yeah.
it's just kind of
Just
brushed
deal.
aside. Yeah,
Yeah.
just deal with it. Right. But I think that's probably one of the biggest main signs is the low energy thing for the minerals.
So then I think like what we're all conditioned to do, unless we're, I don't know, I sat with friends yesterday and I was having my second caffeine of the day, right? So what I was going to say was like what we're conditioned to do is reach for caffeine when we're
Uh-huh.
feeling
Yeah.
depleted, right? And
Yeah.
I was like at my birthday tea party yesterday, I had a little birthday tea
How
downtown in
cute.
Asheville. We have a tea shop and
That's
I
so
was like, I
fun.
had my, cacao in the morning and then I was having my matcha a couple hours later. And I was definitely like, whoa, this is a lot of
Yeah,
caffeine,
yeah.
before noon.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was like, that's the poison.
Uh-huh.
Like that stuff
Uh-huh.
right there. And
Yeah.
I could definitely feel myself like more depleted today because I had
Mm-hmm.
had more caffeine yesterday. But do you want to talk about that that habit of like reaching for caffeine
Mm-hmm.
for energy when we're already depleted?
Yeah, for sure. And it is. I mean, and there's no judgment at all on this because it is
Right.
like you have to function. Like that's the thing. Like you have to function. And so as women, we're like, I got to figure out what does it mean for that that I can function, right? What do I do so I can function? So there's no judgment at all, but it is, and I would say that's what the majority of women do is they either they're just power through, and then they're like completely dead at the end of the day, like they've just zapped, or it's like, okay, I just need more and more caffeine to get me through. The problem with the caffeine piece is not to demonize caffeine or say you should never have caffeine ever, but when you're already depleted, when your body's already in this state where it's like an everyday normal thing for you to have low energy, you're dealing with energy, that there's something going on wrong with your adrenals, right?
Yeah.
We can get a better look at exactly what's going on if when I look at people's labs, but there's something going on with your adrenals. And the fact is that caffeine is a stimulant. So it does stimulate your adrenals. It does create a stress response with your adrenals. And so if they're already in a stressed out state, it's just amplifying what's already going on there. And that's really the issue. So I do have a period of time when I'm trying to help my clients kind of bring down the stress response in the body. It's like there's a period of time where, and it's be very painful for some people. Like I've had some real caffeine addicts, like hardcore, that this is like, I mean, it's like a drug addict getting off drugs, like for real. So I
Yeah.
know this is a big thing for people, but there's a period of time where I'm like, okay, we have to get your body not so reliant on the caffeine. Like we have to be able to bring down the stress response, let your adrenals kind of like exhale,
Yeah.
and let's let your body's natural energy get used to doing what it's designed to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love for the adrenals. We don't need
Yes,
to
that's
like
it.
just
The adrenals. Well, and here's the
love
thing with the
them.
adrenals. Yes, that's the thing. And I have a theory that so many women deal with really difficult time transitioning into perimenopause and menopause when you're going into those stages with just completely wrecked adrenals, because your
Mhm.
adrenals, if your listeners don't know this, especially as women, our adrenals play a huge part, because your adrenals are responsible for producing some of your progesterone, first of all, so we're relying on that. We already know, I think most of us probably know by now, that also it's responsible for our stress hormones, right, like cortisol. When you get into perimenopause and menopause, our ovaries stop producing estrogen. Now our adrenals have to take over. We're asking our adrenals to do a lot. And
Yeah.
so if you're already going into perimenopause and menopause where your adrenals are like little shriveled up, like hanging on for dear life, like you better believe you're probably not going to feel great going into that next stage of life.
Yeah. Yeah. We all need to love up on our
Yes, love
adrenals.
your adrenals.
Yes. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
just scheduled some acupuncture for Sunday morning. Like I was like, can you just stimulate my
Yes,
adrenals?
that's it.
Yeah.
Just take care of your adrenals.
That's what I want. So, okay, so I want to just like tease this out a little bit more. So, if we have these mineral imbalances and we're feeling low in energy, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
What's the, or what else do you want to say about that? Like,
Yeah.
where are these minerals? Let's
Mm-hmm.
go there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Good question.
yeah,
So when I'm looking at the hair tissue analysis, it's going to measure like a couple dozen different minerals. The best place to start, even if you never do a lab, the best place to start is looking at macro minerals, which are, there's 4 of them, which are the ones that we need the most, the ones we use the most, and the ones we deplete the most, the quickest. And that's calcium, sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Those are the macro minerals. So if you're going to go on your own mineral balancing journey, at least start there. I would say potassium, magnesium, and sodium are probably the 3 most common imbalanced minerals.
mm,
And speaking of adrenals, these are the ones that are really required for well functioning adrenals. And when our adrenals are overworked, especially magnesium and sodium, I mean, you're just going through your stores of that, just like that snippety snap. So those are the ones that to really focus in on. And I am always a proponent of food first, but I am also a proponent of supplementation where needed. And since, I mean, unless you're living on like a homestead and you're growing your own stuff, the fact is that our food sources, our source of food, or we're getting our food, or how our food is grown, can, in at least here in the States, I can't speak for everywhere else,
yeah,
it's the nutritional density of that food is much less than it used to be 50, 60, 70 years ago. And there are studies to prove this. The studies of foods in
sure.
the 1950s versus today, nutritional density is completely different. So there are holes in our diet. Even when you eat a super clean, organic diet, there's still going to be holes. And I would say those 3, magnesium, sodium, potassium, are where we're probably lacking the most. I think the studies say like 60 to 65% of us are deficient in magnesium. I really dare say it's
Mm,
probably closer to 90%. I just don't think any of us are getting enough through our diet, at least, which, so
yeah.
I always recommend magnesium supplementation for every human. I think every human, like I
Mm,
give it to my kids, my husband, like
mm,
everybody should be supplementing magnesium, because our food sources are just lacking in that so much, because our soil is deficient. That's where we get it. It's
right.
depleted of so many minerals. So magnesium is a
Right.
big
And
one.
this is where I was just going to like quickly plug farmers markets,
Oh,
like
totally.
organic
Yes.
farmers
Yes.
markets, because
100%.
those farmers are building their
Yes.
soil and it's
That's
going
it.
to be actually richer mineral
A hundred
content in
percent.
the food.
A hundred
Yeah.
percent. And I think people a lot of people sleep on that, because the other thing is with farmers markets, you're getting fresher produce. The longer it sits in the
Yeah.
grocery store, it's also just depleting of minerals by the day. So, and I know not everybody has access to a farmer's market. So, you do the best you can. But if you do have
Right.
access to the farmer's market, you're 100% going to get more nutrient dense food. If you're looking for food sources of magnesium, leafy greens, nuts, and seeds, those are going to be the best food sources of magnesium. So, getting plenty of those and then supplementing to fill in the gaps. Potassium and sodium are the other 2 that I mentioned. And I could get on my soapbox and talk about sodium all day, but we can go down a rabbit hole and talk about it for the next 2 hours. But I will say your body needs sodium. I will say that
Mm,
it's been demonized since, I don't know, I feel like it probably started in the 90s, early 2000s. But the problem with sodium isn't really the sodium, it's the quality of the sodium. It's
right.
where we're getting the sodium, right? There's a difference between table salt and good quality unrefined sea salt. And I'm sure many of your listeners know this and you live by this, but it's the table salt is like the equivalent of white sugar, right? It's been depleted, it's been
Mm,
stripped of every mineral except the sodium chloride. That's all that's left. When you're
yeah.
looking at a good quality, like high quality unrefined sea salt, it's got like 80 to 90 other trace minerals in that little grain.
Yes.
So there's so
I've
much more there.
always used the brand Real Salt.
Mm-hmm.
Like for like 25 years, I've
Mm-hmm.
used Real Salt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Yeah, yeah, no, it makes a difference. It really
Yeah.
does. And I mean, if I could tell you anything, I would say if you haven't ever gone through your cabinets in your kitchen, just throw away your table salt and get a good quality, whatever brand you
Yes.
like is, I mean, it's fine. If you like Celtic salt, you want to spend money on that. I like Redmond salt as it comes from the Great Salt
Mm,
Lake and it's that good ancient salt. So whatever brand, but you just want a good quality sea salt that has
yeah.
all the other trace minerals in it. And then potassium is the last one I mentioned. Potassium is really interesting because it plays a part in your adrenals, but it also is a really important role in your thyroid. And with women, especially when it comes to metabolism and energy, our thyroid plays a huge part. And even if you have, I've worked with so many thyroid clients that they may not have ever been diagnosed with like hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, but they just have a slow functioning thyroid. And the potassium plays such a huge part of this.
Hmm.
And our cells need potassium to help the thyroid hormone get in and out of the cells. So potassium is crucial for that. And I can tell you this is, I don't usually like to speak in generalities, but 100% of the time that my clients have low functioning thyroid, their potassium is so low, like so
Oh,
deficient. So
okay.
potassium is a big one. And this is another one of those, I think the RDA is like, the recommended daily allowance is like 4,800 milligrams. It's just a lot. That's a lot.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
I dare say nobody's getting that much really. So that's
Yeah.
another one like magnesium, where I would say like food first, of course, but then also just making sure if you're taking like a multivitamin or whatever, just making sure you have some in there too to fill in the gaps. For food, bananas, avocados, coconut water, celery, like those are all really good sources of
Mm.
potassium, but just kind of filling in the gaps where you need to for those.
I love celery juice in the morning. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I'm
good.
not doing it all the time by any means, but like, if I were living my best life, I would have like a celery juicer and I would be juicing organic
Yes.
celery every morning.
Yes,
Like,
yes, yes.
whatever's going on in those minerals is so, it makes my body
It's
so
good.
happy.
Yes, yes. There's power in the celery juice. I wish I could do it
Yes.
every day too.
Yeah, yeah, dreams, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love it. Okay, so I'm looking at our like questions, and I want to make sure that we're going deep with this. Do you want to talk about like trace minerals? Like I supplement
Mm.
trace minerals
Hmm.
every day in my water. Like I have two big mason jars, and I'll pour out my water that I want to drink for the day. Like that's how I
Hmm.
measure whether or not I'm staying hydrated.
Yes.
And then I just put my trace minerals like
Hmm.
in the water in the
Yep.
morning so that I like know that I'm getting them.
Yeah, it's
But
perfect.
everything you're saying, like I think that I know my body is like pinging around this topic, and I assume that listeners are as well, because like I feel so good if I like maybe I need electrolytes, or sometimes I'll just like
Hmm.
put a pinch of real salt under my
Hmm.
tongue.
Hmm.
Like when I'm fading, it really is these minerals
Yep.
that like revive me. The other
Yeah.
day I was just at the general grocery store, and I was like, I really want this vitamin water. Like, which is kind of a generic brand for me because I'm
Hmm.
usually like more of a coconut water or like my electrolyte mixes or things like that. But I just like in the general grocery store, I was like, I want this. Like my body was like
Your body was,
craving.
yeah.
Yeah. I can't do Gatorade. That's like too mainstream for me.
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
oh my gosh, those colors are crazy. But the vitamin water, I'm like, okay, it's kind of mainstream, but like I still like it.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. No, I mean, I think all of those uh, are great things to do to help with minerals, and putting the
Yeah.
sea salt in the water, adding the trace minerals, like all of
Yeah.
those things are really great to just kind of reinforce, like, are we getting the minerals? Because that's the other thing I find with a lot of, I mean, I know I did this for a long time. And there is such a thing as overhydrating. I know for
Mm.
me, for the longest time, I was like hardcore on, like, I would drink a gallon of water a day. Like I had this 64-ounce thing. I'd fill it up twice. I was so hardcore on it, but I was never remineralizing. I was just drinking straight
Right.
water all day. Well, and if you think about it, logically, if you think about it, what do you do when you drink a bunch of water? We have to pee all the time. What are you peeing out? You're peeing out minerals. So if you're
Right.
not replacing them, you are literally demineralizing your body all day long. You're never replenishing. So the electrolyte mixes, the sea salt, like the trace minerals, all those things are going to help remineralize. And that's really true hydration. Like, yes, water is important, but we really want to remineralize our bodies on a daily basis. And minerals are something like we have to really, it's not like vitamin B12 or vitamin D or some of those fat soluble vitamins that your body can hold on to for a while. Like minerals
Mm.
are something we have to really be conscious of every day. And I love that you said that, because I find a lot of my clients too, it's like your body, if once you're in tune with your body enough, you really do feel when your body's like, man, I need that little boost of my, my electrolytes or whatever it is. Like your body will tell you when your cells are feeling a little like meh, like I need need to remineralize, need to hydrate, I need that pick me up from those, like replenishing the minerals.
Yeah. Super crucial concepts. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Okay, so we've talked a bit about what we can do to remineralize. I mean, you've mentioned that. Is there anything else that you would suggest to all of these incredible women who are listening? And like, we need energy. Like, we need these energy
Yes,
reserves. We
we
want
do.
more energy.
More energy.
So,
Yeah.
what tips do you have?
Yeah. Yeah. So the other part of the hair analysis that I do, the other part that it reads heavy metals, toxic
Mhm.
elements, and then it also looks at the relationships between minerals. And I think I didn't say this before. I think this is the other piece that's important because it's not just about the individual minerals, because looking at, and this is kind of the other piece that conventional medicine kind of leaves out, you can look at the list of however many minerals in the body and see what's going on, and that's one way to look at it. But you also want to look at the relationships between the minerals. And so on the hair analysis that I do, we look at the relationships because it's how they're interacting with each other, because looking at them at face value is going to tell you one story. Looking at the interactions can tell you, and the ratios between them can tell you a completely different story. So by looking at the ratios, we can see how your thyroid, your adrenals, your nervous system, your blood sugar, your immunity, your hormones, I might have already said that. You can look at all of those just based on the ratios. But the other piece is the heavy metals and the toxic elements. And this is another piece that can impact energy, right? It's overall toxicity in the body. And sometimes I nowadays, now these days, I feel I feel a certain way saying the word toxins and toxicity because it's such a buzzword now.
Mm.
And I think there's like, influencers that are like, toxic this and toxicity. And it's like a lot of it is just kind of BS, honestly. But there when we're looking at what's going on in your body, toxicity is a thing. Like, and it
Yeah.
does affect how your body is working. Like, it is a thing. So when I'm looking at a hair analysis, we're looking at, a handful of heavy metals and toxic elements. And yes, looking at specific ones can tell us certain things, like if you're exposing yourself to too much aluminum or mercury or whatever. But it's also, we want to see if your body's holding on to toxins in the body and not releasing them. This is also a problem. And so I think for women especially, when, first of all, if you're not pooping regularly, you're probably recirculating toxins, or you are recirculating toxins in the body, excess hormones in the body. This is going to impact your energy in a major way if you're not releasing this. We need to break them down. It needs to be in the bile, it needs to be excreted from the body, excess hormones and toxins. So the toxicity in the body really is a thing, and it really does impact your energy. And I think this is a piece that we have to focus on too. It's, ideal motility. Like, are we pooping regularly? Are we eliminating adequately? Are we eliminating on a regular basis? And I've had women come to me and I ask them that, and a question, and the intake is like, I don't remember exactly how it's worded. Basically, it's like, do you poop regularly? Basically. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I poop once a day. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not regularly. Like, we should be pooping more than once a day. And I think women feel like they're regular if they poop every day, but once a day is really not. Like, we should be going multiple times a day. And this is how we excrete toxins, we excrete excess hormones. And this is going to have a huge impact on your energy on a daily basis.
Yeah, which now we're talking about gut health and emotional,
Mm-hmm.
the emotional layers of
So many
it and
aspects.
everything.
A hundred
Yeah.
percent. There's and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is and I think that's why, like, I have this aversion to using like toxicity in the body, because it's not
Hmm.
just like, oh, we need to get rid of toxins, like go sweat and go, like, all those things are important, sweating and all those things, moving your body. But like you said, now really it's like, okay, it's gut health and it's emotional health and it's emotional regulation and it's stored emotions and stored trauma. Like, it's really this
Right.
multi-layered thing that isn't like, go sit in the sauna and detox. Like, this is deeper than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. And like, opportunity, the opportunity is much greater than that, right? I'm trying these
Mm.
like reframes in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I am someone who could like dig for the root
Yes.
forever. Like,
Yes.
I'm a really good shadow worker. And so I'm like reframing into expansion. Like, this is a part of
Yes.
me and the new story. And, so
I
it's
love
like,
that.
there's so much opportunity
Yeah.
when we start to look at these things, because we're going to have to go through dealing with like healing the emotional trauma. We're going to need to learn to be there for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. Like, we're going to have to go through it, and it's so worth it
Mm-hmm.
to like liberate these stored physical toxins, emotional toxins, trauma patterns, etc.,
100%.
from our soma, from the way that we've been like holding it and functioning, and like getting by
Yes.
on the dysfunction until like we can't
That's it. Yeah.
anymore, and
That's it.
then there's opportunity.
Yeah. I love that. It's a perfect reframe. Yeah.
Well, just in case it helps anyone, because like I said, I could I can get very comfortable in the shadow work. Like,
Yeah, sure.
like a
Sure.
perpetual healing. And it's like, no, I didn't come for that.
Yes. Yes.
The reason that we're healing is so that we're actually liberating and creating more space to do what we came to do on the planet,
Yes.
like to
100%.
be who we're meant to be, and to bring these businesses forward and parent and all of these things. So it's
Yeah.
not just like all the demands and I have to have all this energy to do all these demands. It's like, no, I need to have energy to fuel my life, to live my purpose,
Yes.
like to
Yes.
do what I came to do. So
Exactly. That's a great point. And I do think that so many women, and this has been a story for a lot of women I've worked with, they get tied up into the hunt and the search for
yeah,
the thing. And they tie their identity with, if there's been a diagnosis, now their identity's tied
right,
up in that. And so then it does become this perpetual search for the root, the reason, the why.
yeah,
And instead of, like you're saying, like getting that opportunity for the expansion and the liberation and what's on the other side of that, we can get caught up in the loop of trying to find and hunt and find like the one. And here's the other thing too, it's never just one thing. So if you're looking for the
no,
one thing and the one reason, it's futile. Like there's no
yeah,
point. So
yeah,
yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I think that's important for us. Like yes, I think there is value in always wanting, to have optimal well-being and all these different aspects, but to be on this elusive hunt for the one thing that's gonna, like, it's just you're just like on a merry-go-round.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And like, every time we touch on one of these things that like I know resonates for so many listeners, I'm just like, and loving the self. and
That's it.
and everybody self-love right now.
That's right.
Um, so you have a podcast called Hopeful and Wholesome.
Yes.
I love that your name is Hope and your podcast is called Hopeful and Wholesome. There's very hope, there's so much upliftment in that.
Yeah.
But you've been talking a lot on your Instagram and your podcast about women's value
Mm.
and work and the way that we work. And of course, we touched on the alignment there, but you've been sharing about the nervous system and how the
Mm-hmm.
nervous system can get stuck in patterns in relation to work and worthiness that can really hold us back and to be honest, contribute to the dysregulation in our
Mm-hmm.
hormones and the balances that we were just talking about as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I would love to invite you to share some of what you've been excited about regarding work and worth and the way that we work. These are topics that I very much love.
Yeah, same. And so I have a series right now. I think today was the final part of the series. So you can go to my podcast. It's just 5 episodes, but it's about this. And it really came through my own journey with this. And
Yeah.
let's be honest, it's a constant journey. And anyone who's a business owner, entrepreneur listening knows it's a constant journey. And the journey is being able to untangle your worth from productivity and what you're producing and
Yeah.
work and all of that. And I know that was something that I was really entangled with for a long time. And it really did lead to, I was in full on burnout. I had to rebuild.
Yeah.
My adrenals were like hanging on for dear life. Like I had to build my health back up from the ground up. And it wasn't even just about rebuilding the health. It's the rewiring, like you're talking about the nervous system. And that's the biggest piece. And the other reason I wanted to bring this forward into this podcast series is because I had worked with so many women who they'd been to the practitioners, they've been to the functional
Yeah.
practitioners, they've done the, and they'd even done a lot of the nervous system regulation and mindfulness and all the things, but they still couldn't get past that. It was still this perpetual need to work. Rest felt uncomfortable. They felt guilty. They felt like they were going to get behind. They had to keep pushing. And it was the rewiring that had to happen for
Yeah.
them to be able to reconstruct that belief and be able to understand that the rest is part of the creation process. It's not instead of, I'm not resting instead of creating. It's part of the creation process. And there's a
100%.
serious rewiring that has to happen. And I go into this in my podcast, but this is a cultural, patriarchal, like there's so many things that build this wiring system in our brains as women that we're born with, that we really have to be intentional about rewiring as we go into our personal journeys, because it is, I mean, I just think this is what wrecks so many women's health and really does also destroy the joy and the love of the
Yeah.
creation process and the journey that we're supposed to be on, and not so focused on these benchmarks and mile markers and et cetera. But it's like being able to enjoy the journey and the process of the business and of ourselves and who we're becoming along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And if I hadn't taken some extra time off for my birthday this week, the podcast before this would have been about productivity and creativity, because that came up in the Structure and Flow women's group that I have last Wednesday. So it'll be the episode after this, actually,
Love
because
that.
I'll
Perfect.
record it next. Yeah. But that productivity trap, I think, this is a big statement, but it's like, it's a misuse of our feminine energy. It's
100%.
like when we live in this culture, we think that the productivity is the marker, but the actualized use of feminine energy is creativity. And so yeah, I've loved my own journey moving through that, because like we're all so enculturated with that. Like I was a school principal, Hope. I don't know if you know that.
I was a school teacher, so
yeah. Yeah, you have to be super productive, and like every single second of the day
Yep.
counts. And
Yep.
yeah, so then my like feminine masculine reclamation journey came with like leaving the system, which I know many women who are entrepreneurs relate to, because it's like we're leaving that system where we don't want the burnout. We don't want the perpetual demands on our energy. We want to create something, but then there's still the dismantling that we need to do in our own process around those productivity traps and equating our worth with how much we can get done.
Yep.
And in entrepreneurship, it would seem like, well, I'm responsible for getting it done. I just have to keep going. But to the earlier point, like it's actually all energetics.
Yeah, that's it.
It's all energetic. So if you're totally out of alignment, like misusing your energy, you're actually in burnout. You're not in accordance with your own human design. Your business actually isn't going to flow.
Yeah. For sure.
It's not going to work. I know
It's not
that.
gonna work. Yes.
Experience.
Yes. Same. I can attest.
Yeah. Right. And doing the things like even the same tasks. Like I've been, with our creations, like this podcast is a creation of mine. It feels like something I'm literally supposed to hold, right? Like you get these spiritual downloads of like, do this now. This is a part of your mission now, right?
Yeah.
So being in relationship to even this podcast, but you could apply that to like being in relationship with any of your creations, along the way as an entrepreneur. Like I had to be in right relationship with the energy that I was giving this podcast, that this podcast was, giving me. And so over the years, that has involved many tweaks, because at some points it was like, this creation is burning me out.
Yep.
So like, how am I going to do this work and prioritize replenishment?
Right.
And for me, it is being in creation, like
Mm-hmm.
being creational instead of productive
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
allows
that.
me
Yeah.
um, to find that energy, like to find that
Mm-hmm.
resource
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah,
keep creating.
I love that. And that's a big, so one of the aspects of my business, right? Helping with the energetic pieces and looking at human design. And I really believe that this creation part, like creation comes from the sacral center, right? It's our center of creativity and sexuality. It's also correlated with our reproductive organs. And I really feel like this is why
Mm.
so many women deal with so many reproductive issues and hormonal issues is this
Wow.
creative piece. Like you're talking about, there is such a difference between creativity and productivity. Productivity, the doing, this is like the root center. Root center is a pressure center, right? To do things. The
Yeah.
creative center is that sacral center, and when it's out of balance, it is
Mm.
100% gonna, the effects of that will show up on the physical body in that way.
Mm. And okay, so now I'm kind of curious from a personal, I'm like, now I have a personal question. So like I have an open sacral. So anyone
Mm,
who is not a generator has an open sacral to my
right,
understanding,
right.
right?
Hmm, correct.
Thank God I have a defined root
Yeah, that
because
helps. That
it
helps. Yes,
does help.
yes. Hmm.
Like the root will be like, do this now,
Yes,
and
yes.
then I've learned to listen to that. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, if I catch that wave, it's,
Right.
I imagine it's something akin to a sacral. But when you have an open sacral and you don't have that, like, that's the generator, like the
Right.
yes, the
Right. Right. Right.
no, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
For anyone who's new to human design. So I've seen it mentioned kind of in various places on Instagram and things like that, that, we're, as someone with an open sacral, you risk potentially, I would say we risk burnout
Hmm.
by trying to use that
Hmm.
sacral like a
All the time.
generator.
Right. Correct.
But how do you kind of borrow that energy
Hmm.
appropriately? Or how
Yeah.
do you,
That's
yeah,
a good
you get my
question.
question.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So there's a couple ways to look at this. So when you have, so when if you have an undefined or any undefined center, doesn't mean you don't have access to that at all. But I want
Right.
to make that clear first. Doesn't mean you never have creativity or
Sure.
but yes, you're either going to yes, you will feed off of other like the other defined sacrals that you're around. You can feed off of that energy for an amount of time, right? It's not something that you
Yeah.
want to do perpetually. The other piece is you can also use your strategy and your authority to move you. So you're an emotional authority, right? And that what you
Hmm.
said, emotional, right?
Yes.
So that would be kind of the other thing that would kind of lead you down the okay, is this where I'm headed? So
Mm.
as a projector, you're waiting for the invitation. So that's also going to be your drive to move. I've been invited, I've been recognized, right?
Yeah.
So that's your drive to move. And then also listening to your authority. So for you, you're finding that emotionally neutral place, like you ride the emotional wave, you make your decision, and that's where the movement comes from. So for you,
Yeah.
it's going to be more, there's like a cadence and a flow and more of a dance, where a sacral, it's kind of like boom, boom, boom. It can be one to the next thing to the next. It
Mm.
could be like that. Yours is more, there's more of a flow and a dance with universal energy. I'm kind of feeling the emotional wave for the invitations, and you're recognizing
Yeah.
when those pieces come in and the pieces just kind of fall into place.
Yes. Yeah. I just went through a huge kind of, I don't know that I love the word up level, but it feels like, when you kind of graduate one way of being and you're
Yeah.
like now into another way of being,
Up level's
I
great.
just, yeah. And it happened like with the birthday. And that's also the end of a 7-year cycle in my business. Like my first
Mm.
7-year cycle is
Hmm.
ending, another one is beginning. And I was like, I am not doing these certain things anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
I love that.
period. Like it was
Yeah.
like this, my energy is not going to these
Yeah.
places
Yeah.
anymore. And it just, so I'm still in the kind of the excitement of like the place of expansion where like the things have cleared out. And
Mm.
then it's like, well, what's going to come next? And
What's next? Yeah.
if women have listened to this podcast, like I have this, like I have a serpent tattoo. It's like been a part of my sacred feminine path, like this medicine of the serpent. I spent last year making all these clay serpents,
Wow.
and then someone reached out yesterday and asked me to write for their card deck for the, like, to represent the serpent.
Oh, that's
And I was
awesome.
like, What a cool
It's
invitation.
very
Like,
cool. There it is.
right.
Invitations.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So yeah, I was like, ooh, that's what a good invitation really
Yes.
feels like.
Yes.
Yeah. And that like creates
Mm-hmm.
momentum to
Exactly.
do a
Yes.
task. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Hope, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you would love to talk about before we conclude? There's like such a wealth of knowledge that you bring.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I think my parting words of wisdom for women listening are just, I mean, I know it sounds a little cliche, but I feel like it's always worth revisiting is just always to listen to your body. I think
yeah.
that when we're talking about whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well-being, all of these pieces, an awareness and listening is required. And I think so often we either tune out the signs and the signals because we're like, I don't have time to deal with that right now,
Right.
or we've become so disconnected, like we've compartmentalized the mind from the body that we've just been so separate from that. We're not in tune to the language of the body, that the messages that it's sending, or um we've been conditioned by society that to question what are the signs and signals our body is sending. And so
Yeah.
I just always like to remind women just to listen to their bodies and to trust. I think that's the other piece. It's not just listening, but trusting. Because if your body is
Right.
sending you a signal, if your body is giving you a sign, there's a reason, and to trust it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. And it's, I don't think it's cliche at all. It's like basics, but, recently I was thinking about this. I was thinking, the pace of life, like just the
Mm.
pace of life
Hmm.
sometimes, and female entrepreneurs, mothers,
Yes.
wives,
So many roles.
partners, so
Hmm.
many roles. And it's like, we want, how beautiful that we want to do all those things well,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And really creating the time and space to even hear ourselves,
Hmm.
like to even listen differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, the insights that we get in that place can be everything. Like that's going to
Hmm.
be the truth. So yes, hear it, listen to it,
That's it. That's
but
it.
and create space so that you
Yes.
can hear it.
Yes, exactly.
So beautiful. Well, please share with folks where they can find you
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the web and in the
So,
world.
yeah. My website is hopefulandwholesome.com. As Sarah mentioned, I have a podcast called Hopeful and Wholesome. Wherever you download your podcasts, you can find me there. And then I'm most active on Instagram. It's at the Hope Pedraza.
Wonderful. And I will link all of that in the show notes. And I'm just really excited for some listeners to connect with you and, yeah, embark on like a more holistic health journey.
Yeah,
So thank
yeah.
you for all that you're doing.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.